In the vast theater of the cosmos, some transformations are not gifts of evolution. They are sentences. Welcome to a special edition of Strangest Planets. Gregor Samsa awoke one morning from uneasy dreams to find himself transformed into a monstrous insect. He lay on his armored back, his many legs waving helplessly in the air. His brown belly, divided by stiff arches, was pitifully thin compared to the rest of him. He could see his many legs, pitifully thin and waving, as he struggled to right himself. "What has happened to me?" he thought. It was no dream. The alarm clock was ringing. It was 6:30. The train left at 7. He had to get up. He had to catch that train. But how could he get out of bed with all these legs? Gregor tried to rock himself. He rocked himself to and fro with all his might. But he could not get up. He tried again and again. He tried to swing his body forward. But no matter how hard he tried, he remained on his back, rocking like a beetle stuck on its shell. From the next room, his mother called gently, "Gregor, it's time to get up." His father's voice followed, sharper. "Gregor, what are you doing in there?" Gregor tried to answer, but the voice that came out was not his own. A horrible, squeaking, inhuman sound. He cleared his throat desperately, trying to make normal words, but only clicking and hissing emerged. His family grew worried. His sister Grete knocked softly. "Gregor, are you all right?" He could not answer in a way they could understand. The chief clerk from his office arrived at the door, angry that Gregor had missed the train. The family's panic grew. Finally, Gregor managed to unlock the door with great difficulty, using his mouth and legs. When the door swung open, horror filled the room. His mother screamed and collapsed. His father staggered back. The chief clerk backed away in terror, mouth open in a silent cry. Before them stood a giant insect nearly human-sized, with a hard brown shell, waving legs, and a monstrous head with twitching antennae. Gregor tried to speak, to explain, to calm them, but only horrible insect noises came out. The chief clerk fled in terror. Gregor's father, in a fit of rage and fear, grabbed a walking stick and drove his son back into the room, slamming the door behind him. Gregor was trapped, alone, changed. His family stood outside, whispering in shock and horror. His mother wept. His sister tried to comfort her. His father paced angrily. Gregor crawled under the sofa, his new body aching, his mind reeling. How could this have happened? What had he done to deserve this? Outside the door, his old life was already ending. The Samsa family would never be the same. And Gregor was only beginning to understand what he had become. Gregor Samsa's new existence was a prison of his own body. Days blurred into weeks. He could no longer speak in a language his family understood. His voice had become a horrible clicking and hissing that terrified them. He moved on 6 thin legs across the walls and ceiling of his room, finding strange comfort in the vertical surfaces his human body could never have mastered. His sister Gret, the only one who could bear to enter his room, brought him food. At first, she tried milk and bread, his old favorites, but Gregor discovered that his new insect body craved rotten, decaying things. He hid under the sofa while she cleaned, ashamed of what he had become. The family's life began to change around his absence. Gregor had been the sole breadwinner. Now, with him unable to work, his father, who had grown weak and lazy over the years, was forced to take a job as a bank messenger. His mother, frail and asthmatic, began sewing lingerie for a clothing firm. Gret, once a protected young girl, took a job as a salesgirl and learned to shoulder responsibility. They resented Gregor even as they pitied him. The money he had once provided was gone. The apartment they lived in suddenly felt too expensive. They began to take in lodgers 3 bearded gentlemen to help with the rent. Gregor, hidden in his room, listened to everything. He felt the weight of their sacrifice and their growing bitterness. One evening, Greta played her violin for the lodgers in the living room. The music reached Gregor like a distant memory of his human life. Overcome with longing, he crawled out of his room toward the sound, forgetting his monstrous appearance. The lodgers saw him and recoiled in horror. One shouted, "I will not stay in this house!" They demanded their money back and left immediately. Gret turned on Gregor in fury. "We have to get rid of him," she cried. "This is not Gregor anymore. We have done everything we can. He must go." His mother wept, but did not disagree. His father, once so weak, now stood tall and angry, brandishing a walking stick as if ready to strike. Gregor retreated to his room, heartbroken. He understood. He was no longer their son or brother. He was a burden, a monster. That night, as the family sat in exhausted silence, Gregor made his final decision. He had stopped eating. His body was wasting away. He felt himself growing weaker with every passing hour. As dawn broke, Gregor Samsa died not with a scream, but with a quiet acceptance. His family found him the next morning, curled up on the floor, already beginning to dry and wither. For the first time in months, they felt something close to relief. They opened the windows. Fresh air poured in. The nightmare was over. But something in each of them had also changed forever. The morning after Gregor's death, the Samsa family awoke to a strange new silence. The nightmare that had consumed their lives for months was finally over. Mr. Samsa, who had grown stronger and more authoritative through the ordeal, stood tall as he looked at the dried, withered husk that had once been his son, Mrs. Samsa wept quietly, but even her tears carried relief. Gret, now a confident young woman with a job and responsibilities, stared at the remains with a mixture of pity and freedom. They opened every window in the apartment. Fresh spring air flooded the rooms, carrying away the stench of decay and despair. Sunlight poured in for the first time in what felt like years. The family sat down together for breakfast, something they had not done in months. They talked about the future. Mr. Samsa announced that he would write to the chief clerk and formally resign on Gregor's behalf. Grete spoke excitedly about her prospects at work. Mrs. Samsa smiled for the first time since the transformation, dreaming of a smaller, cheaper apartment where they could start anew. As they left the building that morning for a day out, the first real family outing in ages, they noticed how light they felt. The burden had been lifted. The monstrous insect that had once been Gregor was already being forgotten. In the tram, Grete stretched her young body and smiled at the warm sunlight on her face. "It's time to move on," she said quietly. The family agreed. They would find a new home. They would live. They would forget. And somewhere in the empty apartment, the dried remains of Gregor Samsa lay undisturbed, a final monument to a man who had given everything for his family, only to be discarded when he could give no more. The world moved on. But the horror of that transformation lingered in the air like a question no one dared to ask. What if it could happen again? What if, one morning, any of us woke up to discover we had become something unrecognizable, not just to the world, but to ourselves? Some metamorphoses are not endings. They are warnings. Deep beneath the silent surface of the alien jungle, hope seemed as distant as the stars above. Sebel sat with her back against the cold wall of the filthy holding pen, the weight of their captivity pressing down on her. Steve paced restlessly, fists clenched. "We have to try something," he whispered urgently. "Talk to them. Reason with them. There has to be a way out of this." Sable shook her head slowly, her voice heavy with grim understanding.
It's no use, Steve. I've touched their minds. They don't see us as people.
To the Dinch, we're nothing more than livestock. We're their chickens. You don't argue with your dinner. Steve stopped pacing, refusing to accept defeat. Don't give up. If you can't force your way through with your abilities, try something else. You've always been better at reading people than I have. Find another door. Sable closed her eyes, drawing a deep breath. After a long moment, she nodded. All right, I'll try being friendly. The next time the Dinch guard approached their pen, Sable reached out gently with her mind, not with force, but with calm curiosity and respect. She projected simple, non-threatening thoughts. Gratitude for the food they had been given, questions about the Dinch way of life. To her surprise, the guard paused. Its large, potato-like head tilted slightly. A faint connection formed. Sable seized the opening. Where do your people come from? Images flooded her mind, a once beautiful world now reduced to barren rock and toxic wasteland. The Dinch had consumed every resource with relentless efficiency, stripping their home planet until it could no longer sustain them. When collapse became inevitable, they built vast fleets of generation ships and scattered across the stars like locusts. One of those thousands of vessels had landed on this world centuries ago. Now they lived here, expanding their underground empire one enslaved mind at a time. Sable pressed gently further. Why are you assigned to guard duty instead of living on the higher, cleaner levels with the others? The guard's response carried a bitter undertone. I have less intelligence than the others. I am only fit for simple tasks like watching animals. Sable sensed the quiet anger simmering beneath its surface. How do you feel about that? The guard's mental voice grew sharper. I am mad. Sable chose her next words carefully, planting the seed with precision. If you want to take revenge on those who look down on you, there is a way. Help us escape. When the others discover that their less intelligent guard let valuable livestock walk free, they will never assign you to guard duty again. They will learn to respect you. The Dinch guard remained silent for a long, tense moment. Sable held her breath. Then, without a word, the cell door hissed open. The guard motioned for them to follow. Sable and Steve exchanged a stunned glance and slipped out into the filthy lower corridors. The Dinch led them through back passages and maintenance tunnels, avoiding the main thoroughfares where other Dinch might notice. Every step was filled with heart-pounding tension. Distant sounds of digging and the occasional mental command from higher-level overseers echoed through the complex. They ascended level by level, the environment growing cleaner and more sophisticated as they rose. Finally, the guard brought them to a hidden service exit near the surface. With one last, almost reluctant mental nudge, it opened the final door. Go, it thought, and do not return. Sable sent a wave of genuine gratitude. Thank you. You have changed your fate today. The guard turned and disappeared back into the tunnels without another word. Sable and Steve emerged into the alien jungle under the cover of night, hearts racing. They moved quickly and silently, putting as much distance as possible between themselves and the underground city of the Dinch. The mind-controlled silence of the jungle now worked in their favor. No animals stirred to betray their location. Hours later, bruised, exhausted, but free, they reached their hidden backup landing site and activated the emergency beacon for extraction. As the rescue craft descended through the canopy, Sable looked back toward the distant entrance to the Dinch underworld. Mind control, she whispered. The ultimate slavery. And they've turned an entire planet into their feeding ground. Steve placed a hand on her shoulder. We got out. That's what matters now. But both of them knew the truth. The Dinch were still out there, invisible, patient, and always hungry. And somewhere in the stars, other worlds were waiting to become their next hunting grounds.
The wormhole deposited Sebel and Steve onto a lush, alien jungle world bathed in soft emerald light. Towering trees with bioluminescent veins pulsed gently, their broad leaves filtering the sunlight into dappled patterns on the forest floor. The air was thick with the scent of exotic flowers and damp earth. At first glance, it seemed almost paradise. Steve scanned the surroundings, rifle ready. No animals, he muttered. Not a single bird, insect, or creature. That's wrong. Sebel nodded, her suit sensors sweeping the area. The ecosystem feels off. Too quiet. Before they could investigate further, two figures materialized out of thin air just 10 meters ahead. They were short, no more than 4 feet tall, with skin like rough, earthy potatoes and oversized heads that dominated their small frames. Completely hairless, their large, bulbous craniums gleamed faintly in the filtered light. Round, dark eyes regarded the humans with cold intelligence. They carried no visible weapons, yet an aura of absolute control radiated from them. Steve took a cautious step forward. "We come in peace." "We." His words died in his throat. His legs suddenly moved without his command, carrying him steadily toward the aliens. He tried to stop, muscles straining, but his body ignored every mental command. "Sebel, I can't stop walking," he gasped. Sebel's eyes widened in horror as the same invisible force took hold of her. Her legs marched forward involuntarily, matching the alien's pace. No matter how hard she fought, her body obeyed the unseen masters. The two potato-headed aliens, the Dinch, turned without a word and began walking deeper into the jungle. Sebel and Steve followed helplessly, their movements precise and mechanical, like puppets on invisible strings. The jungle around them remained eerily silent, as if every living thing had already learned to hide from these mind-controlling invaders. The Dinch led them to a hidden entrance concealed by thick vines. A ramp descended into the earth, revealing a vast underground complex. The first and second levels were pristine, clean metallic corridors, glowing panels, and orderly storage rooms. The deeper they went, however, the worse it became. The third level showed signs of neglect. The fourth was filthy, with debris and waste scattered across the floors. By the fifth and final level, the air was thick with the stench of unwashed bodies and despair. At the bottom, the Dinch finally released their mental hold. Sebel and Steve stumbled as control of their legs returned. Before they could react, tools were thrust into their hands, primitive but effective digging implements. "Dig," a cold telepathic command echoed in their minds. They resisted at first, but the compulsion was overwhelming. Their bodies moved against their will, joining a line of other captives in excavating new tunnels. Among them was a towering 7-foot-tall humanoid covered in dark, thick fur. Its eyes were dull with exhaustion. Sebel reached out with her telepathic ability, gently touching the being's mind. What she found chilled her to the core. Worse still, the Dinch possessed the ability to become invisible through acceleration-induced transparency, a sophisticated manipulation of the modified Unruh effect. By carefully balancing acceleration and deceleration, they could make their bodies effectively transparent to certain wavelengths of light and detection, rendering them nearly undetectable. Sebel's blood ran cold. Their situation was far more dire than they had realized. At the end of the brutal workday, the captives were herded into filthy holding pens. A single Dinch guard stood watch outside their cell, its potato-like head tilted slightly as it monitored them. Sebel focused her mind, reaching out with every ounce of her telepathic strength. She pushed hard, trying to compel the guard to open the cell and set them free. The guard resisted. Its mind was disciplined, fortified. Sebel felt a sharp mental backlash, like pushing against an iron wall. She gasped and collapsed, sweat beading on her forehead. Steve knelt beside her. "Sebel." She shook her head weakly. "They're strong, stronger than I expected." Outside the pen, the Dinch guard remained motionless, its dark eyes watching them with clinical detachment. The captives settled into uneasy rest, the weight of their enslavement pressing down on them. Above, on the surface, the silent jungle hid its new prisoners. And deep underground, the Dinch continued their endless expansion, one mind-controlled slave at a time.
The debriefing room on the orbital station felt colder than usual as Sebel and Steve delivered their report. General Race listened in silence, his face hardening with every detail: the mind control, the underground slave cities, the casual consumption of intelligent beings. When they finished, he leaned forward, eyes burning with cold resolve. "These Dinch are the most dangerous species we have ever encountered," he declared. "Mind control on that scale? They're an existential threat. We eradicate them." Sebel stepped forward immediately. "Sir, with respect, do not interfere. We barely escaped. They are not conquerors in the way we understand. They are something older. Something that survives by consuming worlds. Attacking them could make things far worse." Race ignored her. "I won't send a single human soldier. The risk of mind control is too high. We send the robots fully autonomous combat units. They'll locate the underground cities, eliminate the Dinch, and self-destruct once the mission is complete. A clean suicide run, no loose ends." Steve's jaw tightened. "Sir, if even one robot falls under their control before it can self-destruct, they'll have advanced weaponry and a direct path to us. This is reckless." Sebel's voice grew urgent. "General, please. We don't fully understand their capabilities. Mind-controlling machines could turn our own technology against us. This could escalate into something we can't contain." Race slammed his hand on the table, cutting them off. "My decision is final. The Dinch are a plague. We burn them out before they spread further." Dismissed. Despite their strongest objections, the order stood. Days later, a swarm of heavily armed autonomous robots dropped through the atmosphere of the Dinch world. They moved with mechanical precision, locating the hidden entrances to the underground cities. The assault was swift and brutal. Plasma fire lit up the tunnels as the robots carved through level after level, eradicating the potato-headed slavers in their lairs. The Dinch, caught completely off guard, shrieked in confusion and terror as their mind control powers proved useless against purely synthetic minds. The robots completed their mission with ruthless efficiency. Once the primary city was wiped out, they triggered their self-destruct sequences. A series of blinding explosions collapsed the tunnels, sealing the Dinch threat beneath tons of rubble. From orbit, the strike looked like a surgical success. But it wasn't. That city had been only one of many. The Dinch had spread across the planet like a hidden infection. The survivors, those in distant colonies, received fragmented reports through their telepathic network. For the first time in their long history of planetary consumption, they had encountered extraterrestrial invaders. They did not understand the concept of revenge. Such emotions were inefficient, but they did understand survival. And they knew one thing with absolute certainty: their current world was now compromised. They would soon need another planet to consume. Back on the station, Sebel and Steve watched the after-action report in grim silence. General Rice looked satisfied. "Threat neutralized," he declared. "One less danger in the galaxy." Sable's voice was quiet but sharp. "You've only delayed it, sir. The Dinch don't stop. They move. They adapt. And now they know we exist." Steve stood beside her, arms crossed. "We just rang the dinner bell for an entire species of cosmic locusts." Rees waved them off. "Speculation. We did what had to be done." As they left the briefing room, Sebel stared out at the stars visible through the station windows. "Somewhere out there," she whispered, "the Dinch are already looking for their next world." And humanity had just made itself a very visible target. Some threats you cannot simply bomb into oblivion. Some threats learn. And some threats are only getting started.